Good afternoon and to everyone. This is Symposium 31, entitled Building Research Capacity in Tuberculosis, the Experience of Training Programs and Their Impact in Low and Middle Income Countries. My name is Henry Blumberg. I'm from Emory University in the U.S. and my co-moderator.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Tony Harris. I work for the Union. I'm Director of Research for the Union. So again, big welcome to you this afternoon.
I think as this audience knows very well, the vast burden of tuberculosis occurs in low and middle income countries, and it's clear that in order to meet the NTB strategy goals, we really need new tools for tuberculosis control, including diagnostics, new treatments, and an effective vaccine. And so research is a critically important component to try to meet the goals. Relevant to that is the importance of developing infrastructure and sustainability for research in low and middle income countries. And that's what our symposium today is focused on. I want to start by thanking Russell Kempker, my colleague at Emory University, who conceived the idea for this session and organized the session. And with no further ado, we'll go ahead and invite Russell to come up. Russell's an assistant professor of medicine in the Division of Infectious Diseases at Emory University in Atlanta, and will be our first speaker. The title of his presentation is entitled An NIH Fogarty Clinical Research Training Program, Achievements and Lessons Learned Over 10 Years.
Great, thank you. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to tell you about our work in the country of Georgia that we've been doing over the last 10 years. And as I start out, I just want to say I'm speaking on behalf of a large group of colleagues, collaborators who really made this program a success. So without further ado, no conflicts of interest. As somebody said a few days ago, we work with TV, so there's rarely ever conflicts of interest. So just a little bit of the outline what I'm going to cover on the next 15, 20 minutes. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our NIH Fogarty supported Fogarty International Center Global Infectious Disease Training Program. And so a little bit about the training, how it works, and also talk a little bit about some of the outcomes that we've looked at, some various measures. And just to sort of move from some of the statistics to kind of give you more real-life scenarios, I'm going to talk about a few trainees' examples and how their training and their career has progressed through the program. And at the end, sort of touch on some of the challenges that we've encountered in the training program and some of our next steps moving forward based on what we've learned. So Emory University is in Atlanta, Georgia. We've had a long-term relationship now with the country of Georgia for over 10 years. We have various partners, including the ones listed here. So the National Center for TB and Lung Disease has been our primary partner. We've also worked with other infectious disease entities, including the National Center for Disease Control and Public Health, and also the International School of Public Health, which is affiliated with Tbilisi Medical State University. So as in the title, the program, training program is supported by NIH Fogarty Center. It's a global infectious disease training grant, and I'll touch on that a little bit more. So when we started this collaboration, it was 2004, and just to sort of give you a little bit of snapshot, TB was, at the time, still is, but a major public health problem in the country of Georgia. There was essentially no research capacity when we started. There was no external funding for any project programs at the TB Center, and really not a lot of scholarly work taking place at the time. This just sort of gives you an overview of the timeline. So our first grant started in 2004. These are 5-year cycle grants. Second one, 2010-14, and fortunately we were funded to keep going through 2019. So I'm mainly going to focus on the first 10 years, and at the end I'll sort of touch on what we've learned and how that's shaping us moving forward. So the program has been run by Dr. Henry Blumberg, one of the co-chairs. I've been associate director over the last few years, and Nestani Tukbadze is a Georgian co-PI. And you'll sort of be hearing her perspective on the program in a few minutes. So just a little bit of background about myself. I started going to Tbilisi when I was a medical resident, second year. I got tied into a TB research training project on latent TB in healthcare workers. And really from there, that was sort of the start of my academic career in TV and also sort of my first foray into research training. I went on to do ID fellowship at Emory, and then when I joined faculty, I started as associate director of the Fogarty program. And based on all the collaborations that formed through the Fogarty, I've gone on to sort of develop collaborative research NH projects in Tbilisi. So this is just a quick overview about what the Fogarty GID grant is. So it's a grant really aimed at creating or supporting innovative training programs that are sort of revolved around building sustainable research capacity in low and middle income countries. So they have three main aims, and that's sort of to develop career development programs for low and middle income researchers, to provide a mentor training research experience, and ultimately, I think, to strengthen the capability of trainees to lead future research training efforts, sort of with the end goal of creating a sustainable research infrastructure in low and middle income countries. Each of the grants provides 5 years of financial support, and the far majority of the money, greater than 75%, goes to low and middle income country, with a majority of those funds going towards supporting trainee salary, expenses, and research funding. So it's really geared towards funding the low and middle income country setting. So these are the specific aims of our specific Emory, Georgia TV research training program. And as you can see, they are very similar to the overall GID specific aims. So ours were to build human capacity resource capacity for TV. We related research in Georgia by both long and short-term training. And most of what I'm going to focus on is really the long-term training today. To improve research infrastructure and capacity in Georgia, to foster collaborative multidisciplinary efforts, and to enhance the TV public health infrastructure, specifically revolved around TV. So our actual training program has a bunch of different components. Training was really a combination of didactic and mentored TV research training. I'll go a little bit more into the didactic component. We've moved more into a distance learning model, plus or minus degree supporting trainings. The central tenet of our training program is to have a mentored research training experience where we feel the trainees really learn a lot of the clinical research skills. We focus a lot on career development, both while somebody's long-term training and after sort of the post-training period. So we continue mentorship beyond the 2-year training period. And the grant, while it doesn't give a lot of funds to actual research funding, it does provide sort of a small amount that can go towards in-country forward rewards. Trainees who finish the 2-year training program successfully, submit a manuscript based on their work, are eligible to apply for an in-country training award. The grant does provide financial support for trainees, so it gives them a salary stipend, and this is to sort of protect some of their time so they can do research. We do support all trainees who have an abstract submitted at the union conference. We'll support travel, and the grant also does allow us to sort of purchase a computer and to pay for some research expenses such as online databases. So our research training is a combination of didactic training and real-world research training. In the first 5 years, we really focused a lot on sort of sandwich training, with a lot of the training happening at Emory University. So we would bring long-term trainees to Emory to obtain their master's in public health, their master's in science and clinical research, which worked very well. However, given the expense of coming to the U.S. for a master's program, this didn't really allow us to train many long-term trainees. So in cycle 2, we transitioned to more of an in-country training model. So we would sort of work with the Tbilisi School of Public Health and support people getting an MPH program, but we would also supplement that with long-distance learning. And I'll talk a little bit about the classes that we offer through long-distance learning. And as you'll see when I go over sort of how many people we have trained, this vastly increased our number of long-term trainings. We really put a lot of focus on research ethics training. So we both have an in-country research ethics training workshop every year. All trainees also will complete the city research training program. We have started to also offer English language lessons, so both writing and reading, because we realize this is a huge barrier to sort of writing a manuscript, conducting research. We really wanted to sort of minimize this as much as possible. So we put a lot of energy and focus on English. And every year we have an annual in-country poverty research training conference. This is where all trainees get to present their work, either work in progress or completed work. We host various workshops, including topic workshops and also skill building, such as oral presentation, grant writing. And more recently, we started to hold mentorship training workshops, and I'll touch on that in the end. So our video long-distance learning has really allowed us, I think, to increase the number of people where we can provide training. So over the last 4 or 5 years, we've been offering 3 classes for all trainees, whether they're getting an MPH or not. All trainees take classes: biostatistics, data management, and scientific and grant writing. This is all offered through, I think it's Adobe Connect. So it basically creates a virtual classroom. So you can see the teacher, the students can ask classes like through the computer. So it's a very interactive format, and it still, I think, allows the trainees to have access to excellent teachers, classes, and I think this has really been a great success. Mentored Research Project is a really big part of our program. This is really mainly focused on the long-term trainees. Each of the trainees will develop and carry out a TD-based research project with mentoring from both a U.S. and an in-country Georgian mentor. Trainees are really responsible for initiating, leading, really driving the study, all the aspects that go along with carrying out research, preparing the IRB, logistics, and once the research is done, also leading the manuscript writing efforts. Mentoring, so we've been fortunate. Internet is excellent in Georgia. We've been able to do video Skype calls every month. So we really encourage everybody to talk with their U.S. mentor at least once a month. In reality, it happens a lot more, and also to meet with their in-country mentors at least monthly. So this is where we can provide help with logistics, data analysis, writing. And over the last few years, we've worked on developing an IDP, or individual development plan. So this really gives the trainee an opportunity to sort of reflect on many of the aspects that are important for an academic career. These are things such as listing their short and long-term goals, talents, strengths, weaknesses, and then the things that they want to work on, also sort of laying out how are they going to go about getting those skills. And obviously we will help put those plans together, where they are in their project, goals moving forward, and just to have them start targeting potential journals and funding opportunities, and make them put a timeline together. And this is reviewed by both mentors, and it's a great time for feedback and for exchange between the trainee and the mentorship team. And this is done on an annual basis. So for some of our achievements over the first 10 years, this is just some of the demographics. We have a total of 9 teen long-term trainees. Median age is 30, female. Most of them have been female, about 2/3. And you can see a huge difference. When we were doing more training at Emory in the first cycle, we were only able to train 4 long-term trainees, and we moved to more of an in-country, long-distance training model. We tripled our numbers up to 15 long-term trainees. As far as at the time of when the trainees initiated the program, 12 of them worked at the National Center for TB and Lung Disease, 5 were MPH students, and a few were sort of outside these. Only one of the 19 trainees had a prior PubMed publication. So you can tell there was not a lot of existing scholarly activity going on before the program. So just for some of our publication stats, this training was really a combination of didactic and mentored TB research training. I'll go a little bit more into the didactic component. We've moved more into a distance learning model, plus or minus degree supporting trainees. The central tenet of our training program is to have a mentored research training experience where we feel the trainees really learn a lot of the clinical research skills. We focus a lot on career development, both while somebody's long-term training and after sort of the post-training period. So we continue mentorship beyond the 2-year training period. And the grant, while it doesn't give a lot of funds to actual research funding, it does provide sort of a small amount that can go towards in-country poverty work. Trainees who finished the 2-year training program successfully, submit a manuscript based on their work, are eligible to apply for an in-country training award. The grant does provide financial support for trainees, so it gives them a salary stipend, and this is to sort of protect some of their time so they can do research. We do support all trainees who have an abstract submitted at the union conference. We'll support travel, and the grant also does allow us to sort of purchase a computer and to pay for some research expenses such as online databases. So our research training is a combination of didactic training and real-world research training. In the first 5 years, we really focused a lot on sort of sandwich training, with a lot of the training happening at Emory University. So we would bring long-term trainees to Emory to obtain their master's in public health, their master's in science and clinical research, which worked very well. However, given the expense of coming to the U.S. for a master's program, this didn't really allow us to train many long-term trainees. So in cycle 2, we transitioned to more of an in-country training model. So we would sort of work with the Tbilisi School of Public Health and support people getting an MPH program, but we would also supplement that with long-distance learning. And I'll talk a little bit about the classes that we offer through long-distance learning. And as you'll see when I go over sort of how many people we have trained, this vastly increased our number of long-term trainees. We really put a lot of focus on research ethics training. So we both have an in-country research ethics training workshop every year. All trainees also will complete the city research training program. We have started to also offer English language lessons, so both writing and reading, because we realize this is a huge barrier to sort of writing a manuscript, conducting research. We really wanted to sort of minimize this as much as possible. So we put a lot of energy and focus on English. And every year we have an annual in-country poverty research training conference. This is where all trainees get to present their work, either work in progress or completed work. We host various workshops, including topic workshops and also skill building, such as oral presentation, grant writing. And more recently, we started to hold mentorship training workshops, and I'll touch on that in the end. So our video long-distance learning has really allowed us, I think, to increase the number of people where we can provide training. So over the last 4 or 5 years, we've been offering 3 classes for all trainees, whether they're getting an MPH or not. All trainees take classes: biostatistics, data management, and scientific and grant writing. This is all offered through, I think it's Adobe Connect. So it basically creates a virtual classroom. So you can see the teacher, the students can ask classes led through the computer. So it's a very interactive format, and it still, I think, allows the trainees to have access to excellent teachers, classes, and I think this has really been a great success. Mentored Research Project is a really big part of our program. This is really mainly focused on the long-term trainees. Each of the trainees will develop and carry out a TB-based research project with mentoring from both a U.S. and an in-country Georgian mentor. Trainees are really responsible for initiating, leading, really driving the study. All the aspects that go along with carrying out research, preparing the IRB, logistics, and once the research is done, also leading the manuscript writing efforts. Mentoring, so we've been fortunate. Internet is excellent in Georgia. We've been able to do video Skype calls every month. So we really encourage everybody to talk with their U.S. mentor at least once a month. In reality, it happens a lot more. And also to meet with their in-country mentors at least monthly. So this is where we can provide help with logistics, data analysis, writing. And over the last few years, we've worked on developing an IDP, or individual development plan. So this really gives the trainee an opportunity to sort of reflect on many of the aspects that are important for an academic career. These are things such as listing their short and long-term goals, talents, strengths, weaknesses, and then the things that they want to work on, also sort of laying out how are they going to go about getting those skills. And obviously we will help put those plans together. Where they are in their project, goals moving forward, and just to have them start targeting potential journals and funding opportunities, and make them put a timeline together. And this is reviewed by both mentors, and it's a great time for feedback and for exchange between the trainee and the mentorship team. And this is done on an annual basis. So for some of our achievements over the first 10 years, this is just some of the demographics. We have a total of 19 long-term trainees. Median age is 30, female. Most of them have been female, about 2/3. And you can see a huge difference. When we were doing more training at Emory in the first cycle, we were only able to train 4 long-term trainees, and we moved to more of an in-country, long-distance training model. We tripled our numbers up to 15 long-term trainees. As far as at the time of when the trainees initiated the program, 12 of them worked at the National Center for TB and Lyme Disease, 5 were MPH students, and a few were sort of outside these. Only one of the 19 trainees had a prior PubMed publication. So you can tell there was not a lot of existing scholarly activity going on before the program. So just for some of our publication stats, this is sort of a common denominator, I think, at what people look at as far as productivity. Over the 10 years, we've had 50 PubMed peer-reviewed publications from long-term trainees. 14 of our 19 have authored peer-reviewed publication, and a few of the more recent trainees have manuscripts in press, so this number will probably increase. We've had a wide range of journals, 28 different journals. I just listed some of the impact factors, a median of 3.2 with a wide range, as you can see. But I think some of the, beyond these overall numbers, some of the stats are a little bit more telling. I think it's not just people are publishing once. I think they're having sort of a productive first couple of years. The median publications per trainee is 8. All 14 have co-authored at least one publication in the last year and a half. So it's not like they published once a long time ago. People are still active, still doing research. And I think as a marker of sort of independence and that people are moving outside the Emory collaboration and forming new groups, is that 17 of the publications were without Emory collaborators. So for us, that's a good sign that people are moving and doing new things with new people. In total, there's been over 700 citations from these 50 peer-reviewed publications. So to get a different look at the publications, so the overall number doesn't tell the full story, but as you can see, the first few years were pretty bare. So I think the first cycle, we really, it took us a long time to really ramp up productivity. So I think this is sort of, for us, is really telling that it takes a while to build a critical mass, to build the infrastructure, until you really start seeing productivity. So it wasn't until about the second cycle where we really start seeing success and good academic output. These are just a few of the various topics. So we've had a whole range of different TB-related areas, from latent TB in healthcare workers, tobacco and smoking, the impact of diagnostics, the effect of surgery on outcomes in M and XDR, and also Neston. She conducted the first, or led the first randomized clinical trial in TB patients in Georgia, which was a pretty monumental feat. And this is just updated this morning. I just want to highlight, even at this conference, we have a lot of trainees giving public presentations, and even one yesterday that I had no idea. Nino Mtadze, one of our former Fogarty trainees yesterday, sort of went over how Georgia's become the first country to roll out active drug safety monitoring, which was pretty impressive. As far as career development, the majority of trainees remain in the field of TB, about 80%. With most remaining at the TB Center, some at NCDC. 4 of our trainees have gone on to develop, to sort of have expert positions at the WHO, where they're TB consultants in various fields with TB, epidemiology, infection control. 6, about a third of our trainees have went on to achieve a Fogarty in-country award, which is a competitive grant process. 6 have got external grants and been the PI of these grants outside the Emory system. 5 have gone on to attain leadership positions, most within TB. And sort of just to take it from stats to give you a few real-world examples. So I'm sort of highlighting Nestani, who will be speaking in a few minutes. So she's been a perfect example of, I think, what the program is meant to do. She was one of the first long-term trainees. She came to Emory for a year to do lab training at Emory in the CDC. She's focused a lot of her work on TB diagnostics, and also a lot of effort and time in building research capacity at the TB Center, 18 publications. Has gone on to obtain various different funding mechanisms from the Fogarty to many sources outside the Fogarty. I just, for the few examples that I give, I kind of try to encapsulate their career pathway. So I think there's a lot of different career pathways, and it might not be the same in one country versus another. But she sort of combined research administration, team science, consultancy to have a really productive, successful career. She's gone on to found the research unit at the TB Center, which just started 2 years ago, and now they're sort of able to be an attractive site for all these clinical trials that are starting to be rolled out in drug-resistant TB. She's now the Georgian PI for the Fogarty grant and also a WHO expert consultant. So she's a very great example of a multi-pronged approach to maintaining a research career. The goal is for the TB Center to have a self-funded research unit where they can actually hire a team and create further opportunities for trainees. Some of the challenges, and she might go into this a little bit more, but lack of an adequate research administrative staff. So this makes things very difficult when you're trying to start up a research unit and you really have to do everything on your own. This doesn't give you a lot of time for skill building. And as you become a site for all these clinical trials, I think one of the difficult decisions is which trials and which studies and which collaborators should you have. So Sergo Vashikitse is one of my close collaborators, and I think different type of trainee, but another great example of how the training can be successful. So Sergo was a little bit, probably our oldest trainee. I think when he started, didn't speak a lot of English, so we really did intensive English training. He was the chief of the thoracic surgery department. He's gone on to have 5 Fogarty supported publications in the role of surgery and MNXDR TB. He sort of has a career pathway, I think, of a clinician scientist, and team science, which I think that's sort of the underlying theme for all of them is team science, which I think is really important. He's taken advantage of the unique patient cohort to really conduct important and interesting research. And as opposed to regular clinician, his surgical specialty gives him a little bit more time for research, a little more flexibility. Challenges for a clinician scientist pathway in Georgia and probably many other similar countries. There's really no protected time or financial support given to develop a research career, and there's not much of a model for a clinician investigator. So my last case study, Maya Kipiani, also a close collaborator of mine, and is here in the audience. She's a current PhD Fogarty trainee. She came to Emory for 1 month, so just short-term training. Has gone on to have 14 Fogarty-related publications, many excellent research work that she's done, including one of the first studies looking at the impact of the molecular testing on outcomes. And just this last year, she's a PI, 1 year, $100,000 grant, which is pretty impressive. The Maya's pathway is sort of a little bit different. Academic investigator, team science. She's an epidemiologist. She's sort of part of our new effort to train PhDs, and also for her to become herself a research mentor to trainees in country. So her plan will be sort of to develop a career based on the National TB program, and potentially after she gets her PhD, a university appointment, to eventually apply for independent funding, and to be a mentor to future trainees. Challenges, there's not much of an existing in-country mentor, role model, infrastructure, and it's hard to get in-country funding. You really have to go outside to get external funding to support this sort of career pathway. Lessons from our experience, research training is critical to developing research capacity and infrastructure. I think we showed that our in-country model has really been successful and allows us to expand the number of trainees. I didn't touch on it much, but we've really used a model of a senior and a junior mentor US, which I think has been a big part of our success. And as we move forward, we're really looking to sort of make Fogarty trainees become in-country mentors themselves and take over sort of the research, teaching, and training. Just a few quick challenges. There's not many in-country mentors. There's not a traditional culture of mentorship, which makes it a little bit difficult. A hierarchical system, limited pool of TB researchers. So we're now having a difficult time sort of finding new TB researchers, as all the people at the TB Center who are interested in research have gone through our program, and now we need to start looking for other sources of junior investigators. few opportunities for funding. Our next steps, we're really now trying to sort of transition to train people on providing mentorship themselves and developing a sustainable research infrastructure so they can take over everything in the next few years. Since I'm short on time, I won't go into much of the details, but we're really working on developing mentorship training. We're doing surveys, focus groups to sort of guide the best plan forward and how to do mentorship training. These are just some of the topics that we're going to be working on and discussing in some of our methods of training. So in summary, 10 years of Fogarty GID supported didactic and mentorship training. This led to a critical mass of well-trained and productive researchers, drastically improving the research infrastructure in Georgia. Training is enhanced internationally recognized TB-related research, including such things as publications, grant funding, participation in international clinical trials. So while we've come far, I think there's still many challenges to having a fully sustainable research program, but we're on the way. So thank you to all you for listening and all the many collaborators who've made this program a success.
Thanks, Russell, for a really nice overview. I think we have time for one or two questions. Please set up the slide for the next presentation.
So thank you very much and congratulations. Looks very good. Great initiative. Just two quick questions. The first is, would you consider, I see most of the research is focused on TB,
Yes.
and you've built this critical mass. Could they be a catalyst for research in other areas, such as HIV and so on and so forth? And the second is the dissemination strategy, whether you would also consider, say, for a country like Georgia or regional areas, also in Russian or the local language.
Yeah, so for the first point, I think yes, definitely it can be a platform. I didn't get a chance to kind of talk about the current cycle, but I think we're really focusing on, one, the intersection of TB and other important comorbidities. So we're trying to focus our research on what we feel is most important in Georgia. We just had a grant where it was a collaboration between TB and HIV Center, which rarely happens. So that was a big sort of step forward to get the HIV and TB Center together. And now a lot of our efforts are focused on diabetes, smoking, comorbidities that are prevalent, we feel probably important for TB outcomes in Georgia. So we are sort of trying to expand a little bit outside TB. As far as the local dissemination strategy, it's probably an area we need to work on. We really aim to sort of get most of the work out, I think, in PubMed-related journals, which is going to be English. We feel it'll be a broader audience. But yeah, it's a point definitely well taken. We do try to emphasize that all the research gets presented at the actual National TB program, and they do have a weekly research conference. So at least everybody involved in the research or at the TB program will sort of be aware of the findings, and they can be implemented in clinical practice.
Thanks very much.
So thank you very much. So let's move on to our second speaker. So I have great pleasure in introducing Ajay Kumar, who lives in Bangalore, India. Ajay came through the sorted model, so as a trainee, as an alumnus, as a fellow, now as Deputy Director of Research, and will take over in the Union as Director of Research in January next year. So Ajay, you're going to tell us about the sorted model, successes and challenges.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Harris, for this generous introduction. In this particular presentation, I'm going to cover a model of operational research capacity building that has been happening since 2009. It is now popularly known as SORTIT model, which stands for Structured Operational Research Training Initiative. And I'm going to speak about the model, very briefly about what the model is all about, and give you some metrics as to indicate what are the successes we've had over the years, as well as some challenges and next steps. Pretty much the same outline as what we presented. If you look at the purpose of putting together a course like this, it happened in 2009 when Union and NSF and some of the other partners came together to actually put together a program with the purpose of teaching practical skills for conducting as well as publishing operational research among the public health practitioners and the other professionals. And how do we use this evidence to influence policy and practice? So these were the two main goals of this particular model. And as you can see, the approach is to combine not just training but also combine it with implementation. So it's a bit of an apprenticeship program where participants are trained but also are expected to conduct a research project and take that through to its completion. So it's product oriented with an aim of having a published or a submitted research paper by the end of the training. There is a structured modular approach with 3 modules. I'll briefly speak about those. There are strict milestones that must be achieved to stay in the course. Again, I'll speak a little bit. And to maintain the brand sorted, there are some targets that must be achieved. So this is briefly about the model. If you look at the course itself, as I told, there are 3 modules. And participants who are selected, they essentially come with a research idea which has emanated from their own operational program settings, which is to address one or the other constraint that they are faced in the implementation of the program. So when they come with an idea in module 1, this is all about developing a protocol. So they are taught how to develop a protocol, but not only they are taught, but they are mentored to convert their idea into a full proposal in that week. That is followed by module 2, which is all about data, where they are trained as to how to learn how to create a data capture form using Epidata software, and how do we plan for analysis. And after these 2, they essentially go back to their settings, full protocol. There is a process to submit to ethics committees, get ethics approval, as well as collect data. So there is a gap of about 6 to 8 months between module 2 and module 3. And there are milestones to monitor whether they are on track with their projects or not. And as I told you, we are very strict with these milestones. If somebody does not meet them, they are dropped out of the cohort. The milestone 1 essentially comes from module 1, which is to submit the finalized protocol to an ethics committee that we consider as the first milestone. The second milestone comes from the module 2, where they submit a Epidata database created to capture data, as well as prepare a plan for analysis for their own respective projects. And then they go back, collect data. And milestone 3 is essentially that they show that they have completed data collection and have a draft analysis. So that's the milestone 3. And only those who meet this milestone 3 are brought back to the final module, which is about writing a paper. So in this module, they learn the principles of scientific writing, and also they are mentored to put together everything what they have done in the form of a paper. And then the final milestone really is about 4 weeks after module 3, when they have to submit this to a peer-reviewed journal. So whoever completes this, that's considered as successful completion of the course. In terms of teaching format, we use a lot of lectures, discussion during the course. Plenary presentations are one of the strong points in this course. So participants get an opportunity to present their work, the protocol, the paper as it goes along, and get the peer feedback, as well as hands-on mentorship is a strong component. In fact, we have 2:2. That means we have a group of 2 mentees in each course, and each group of mentees have 2 mentors. One a bit like you, a senior mentor and a junior mentor. So there is also a mentorship training program embedded within this happening. These are the sorted targets. We call these 80-80-80 targets. And just to let you know, after every module, we ask participants to score us as to how the module was on very different aspects of the module, the content, delivery, the way facilitators mentored. And we want to score 80%. That's one indicator. We want 80% of all participants who start on the course to complete. That's another indicator. We want 80% of the papers that get submitted to a paper to publish within 18 months of submission. That's another indicator. And another is about 80% of all these papers will be assessed for effects on policy and practice. So these are the 4 80 targets that we have. A bit of some results, how is it working? So we've had about 461 participants over a period of between 2009 and 2016. We've conducted about 40 courses, and if I look at this particular map shows the global research capacity gap. The indicator essentially is researchers per million population in the country. And I'm sorry, the picture is not very clear, but you can see the white areas in Africa and Asia. That's where essentially most of the gap is. That is what it is indicating. And our participants, most of them are coming from those gap areas. So we've had about 500 participants in 82 countries between this period. In terms of projects, we have about 50% of our projects are on TB, coming because we are TB is our strength coming from the union. But thanks to our partners, particularly MSF and others, we have been able to expand to other topics, including maternal and child health, malnutrition, neglected tropical diseases, non-communicable diseases. So it's working as well in other topics as well. In terms of outputs, I'm here giving the outputs of the 30 completed OR courses we've had till now. About 350 participants starting the course and 90% completing the course with all the milestones. That means 90% had a paper which was submitted to a journal. And 329 papers were submitted to the journals, of which as of 30th September, 86% have been published. Many are under review, so we, on a cohort-wise assessment, if you look, close to 90% get published. So this is with reference to 80 targets of sorted. How are we doing with that? I think in the first, we've had about, this is for the first 14 courses where we have been able to assess on all the indicators. We are doing well on the modules. Every module we've scored more than 80% from the participants. Again, 90% completing, 90% publishing, and almost everyone assessed for policy and practice. In terms of policy and practice, this is one of our key emphasis in our courses, that we focus on publication, yes, but we want to go beyond that to see what's the impact on policy and practice. And a couple of assessments we have done of the first 14 courses. We have seen that about 2/3 of the papers have had some impact on policy or practice, and the kind of changes we've had is it could be a change in the way the program is implemented on the ground. It could be a change in the monitoring and evaluation indicators that are used for monitoring the programs. Sometimes they've changed the guidelines, the way things are practiced. It could vary. It could be an organizational level change which happens in the institution, or it could be a change in the institution, or a district level change, or sometimes we have also had national level policy change. But these data are self-reported through a questionnaire, so that's a part of the limitation. But nevertheless, that's something we are trying to improve as we go along. There have been many examples. A couple of them here. One of them is this is a national policy change which happened in India, where all TB patients are now being routinely offered testing for diabetes mellitus. So that's one example. There have been examples from Liberia, Kenya, in how the victims of sexual violence have been managed at the institutional level. There have been changes in impact on reducing maternal mortality through emergency obstetric services in Burundi. So there have been several examples, and we have written about these, a couple of publications. In terms of just tracking what happens beyond the course, we also do a follow-up 18 months after they finish a course, and we publish some of the results. Just to summarize, about 60% have completed at least one research project after this course has happened. So that's a bit of some impact beyond the course, what happens. About 50% have published at least one paper, and about 1/3 of them have facilitated at future operational research courses. Either on their own, some of them have been able to conduct courses on their own in their own settings, whereas some have come back and facilitated in the courses we conduct. So these are sort of indicating some long-term effects of this capacity building initiative. In terms of cost, this is a question we often get asked. We spend about 7,000 euros per published paper is what we are taking it as an indicator, which includes the cost of open access publication, the training, flights, per diem, accommodation, everything is included in this. In terms of other achievements of the model, there was an independent evaluation commissioned by the DFID a couple of years ago, and they've given a big report with a detailed analysis, and they say this model sets a benchmark in for capacity building, and the fact that this has now been adopted, what started as a Union MSF model in 2009 was adopted by WHO TDR, rechristened as sorted, and being expanded to other countries. It's being expanded to other thematic areas beyond TB, beyond HIV, to tobacco control, cancer, Ebola. So that's again testifies the model. Acknowledged and cited widely by the Essence Group, which is essentially a collaborative framework between the funding agencies, and I also see the model being recognized by the universities. One example being University of Bergen acknowledges, so anyone who has done the training gets a certain credit points towards doing a PhD, or so that's being acknowledged. In terms of enablers, just to list, I think what the main enablers for the success of this model, I think begins from selection process, where we have a competitive process. People have to apply, and a selection panel looks at all the applications, and then the structured and an output-oriented approach. I think that's another key difference I see with other training programs. We're highly focused on something coming out of it. A strong and hands-on mentorship, which really begins from the idea till the paper gets published. I think that's another facilitator in this thing. And the fact that research questions are all generated from the programs. Now, that's to me is because that brings the relevance of the topic. The research is and there is national co-authorship, ownership of results. One of the questions I often get asked is, how come about half of your projects are able to make changes on the ground? I think the main reason for me is that nearly 60% of all the papers get published. They are all having national co-authorship, and so they are more likely to own up the results and act upon them. And of course, the other thing is we have been able to constantly reflect. That has been an ongoing quality improvement program, and the model is getting optimized every day. A few challenges, just to summarize, about 10 to 15%, as you can see, failed course, and mainly because of the failure to collect data, sometimes professional reasons like they change the job, go elsewhere, sometimes personal reasons, sometimes delays in getting ethics approval. A few instances we've had authorship issues, in the sense they complete the project and then there is an instance that the supervisor doesn't accept for publication. Very rarely we've also had instances when the results are not very good and the programs are very concerned about putting it in the public domain. So they've finished their project but were not able to submit it for publication. The other common challenge we are now finding is that this is a common comment I hear quite often from the program managers. They say, I know the problem. We don't need research to identify and make the problem more visible. What I need is I want to know why there is the problem, and I want to know what can be done about it. So we've felt the need for including qualitative research methods and mixed method research designs into our courses. So that is something we have started a year ago. We call it Sorted 2.0. Where we are training formally all the people in mixed method research designs and encourage people to undertake this, so that the why question can also be answered in the same research. I often see a tension in finalizing the research question when participants come onto the course. because we have to finish everything in a week. So we have started a component of pre-course mentorship after selection, a couple of weeks before they come to the module 1, so that the research question can get sharpened by the time they reach module 1. So to conclude, this is a target-oriented training with the products being papers and of course also the influence on policy and practice. Of course, the long-term vision is to build capacity and develop leaders in operational research in learning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Great. I think we've got time for one, maybe two questions. Quick questions from anybody? Yes, please.
Just a question on your target of 8%. Your results are very good. Is it time to redefine your targets? Why did you choose 80%? You know, it's,
we were asked this question by our donors, isn't it? And we said that we've already set it at a pretty high level, and we can set it at 90% because we are achieving 90%, but quite often, despite all our best efforts, we don't get our selection right. There are multiple reasons, and it has been really hard to achieve 100%. What do you say?
And also, we're moving now from regional, international to national. We're not sure we'll get quite the same outputs because of your selection of participants. So we're going to stay at 80 for the time being.
okay. A wider discussion we have.
Okay, yes.
You emphasized national co-authorship as an important point with regard to implementation. Wouldn't it be good to go further and say participation of program people as co-authors or PIs rather than just national, because the composition of the teams within the countries will be very critical for implementation?
Oh, sorry, I meant actually that.
Okay.
When I said national co-authorship, I meant authorship, co-authorship by the people in the Ministry of Health, the programs and things like that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, one last question. Thank you. Yes.
Sorry. William Morris, USA. Thank you. Great presentation. Could you just expand on your last point about this issue of identifying the research question, and that can be difficult. So can you talk a little bit about that process? Do you get just a few lines from them? Do you get half a page? Do you get something bigger? How does that work? Because that's often the struggle we have.
Yeah.
The question is not amenable to actual research, or it's not policy relevant.
Can you do that in 20 seconds?
Yes. Okay, very quick. So at the time of application, they give a half a page concept note. But it's not the research question is not very clearly defined. So with pre-course mentorship, which begins 2 weeks before the course, we are trying to improve on that process. Otherwise, it used to be a struggle in a week. We spend 2 days, 3 days on getting the question right, and with very little time for protocol development. Thanks.
Thank you, Adi, very much.
It's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Dr. Mestani Chisadze, and as Russell mentioned, Mestani was one of the first trainees in our NIH-funded Fogarty Global Infectious Disease Research Training Program. And as Russell mentioned, she's now the director of the research unit at the Georgian National Center for Tuberculosis and Lung Disease. And the title of her presentation is From Different Angles, Role of Research Training Program for Personnel Development and Scientific Research Capacity Building at the National Center for Tuberculosis and Lung Disease.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bloomberg. Good afternoon. This is my great pleasure to be here and to share with you the experience we have on research capacity building in Georgia. I want to talk really from the different angles, from the different perspectives of research capacity building. And I mean individual capacity building, organizational capacity building, and then institutional capacity building. And by individual capacity building, I mean giving the opportunity to the interested people to get training, to get scholarships, to get possibility of applying on the grants, and then doing their own research and then disseminating the results. And by organizational capacity building, I mean that having the unit or administrative department within the a structure which can oversee all research within the institution. And by institutional capacity building, I will talk about the legal framework and the ethical framework, which needs to support actually the research capacity building overall in the country. So I will start about the individual capacity building, which had happened back in Georgia. And in the first presentation, Russell has already mentioned about it. After the dissolution of Soviet Union, there was very little in our countries, and particularly in Georgia, happening towards research. And in 2004, the country got a unique opportunity to be part of the Emory Georgia training program, which gave opportunity to the people working in tuberculosis to get trained specifically in TB research. And since then, we had several trainees, and I will not go into those details, Russell already pointed out. We had short-term trainees, we had long-term trainees, and some of them were based in U.S. while they're training, and then we switched to the distance training programs. And now most of our trainees stay in the country and can attend the courses provided by Emory online. The good thing is that this really triggered additional possibilities to the National Center for Tuberculosis and Lung Diseases, which I represent, and we get additional opportunities from other research institutions, including European research institutions, for some more training. This was doctoral trainings with Swiss Tropical and Public Health Institute, which is right now ongoing, and some postdoctoral trainings also through NIH CRDF granted project, Israel Tropical Institute of Amsterdam, and some other institutions. So if you look in the numbers, maybe they look little, but overall we're talking about one facility in Georgia, which is not even a research facility. It's a clinical care facility, main referral center for tuberculosis, and I think that it's quite a lot for this type of facility in terms of individual capacity building. So all this training started back in 2004, but until 2014 we really did not have any organizational structure to oversee the coming pool of research activities. And in 2014, with the help of and great support of the administration and the director of the National Center for TB and Lung Diseases, Dr. Zaza Valiani, we have implemented a research unit, which was a separate unit as a department. And one of the main goals of this department was to maintain and to really do the quality research. The good thing is that we thought that it will be really important that this unit can self-maintain, self-fund itself, and we have been looking for the different sources of funding for that, and I will be talking about it also. Now about the overall impact of individual capacity building in terms then of organizational impact. And this slide is really self-explanatory, and you see here the number of projects which has been carried in this one institution as the National Center for TB and Lung Diseases. And compared back to 2006, I think the numbers are quite impressive in 2016. We are doing like 41, we have ongoing 41 research projects, and mainly we're doing operational and translational research. This is very important for the country like Georgia, because we really want to see the impact of the operational research and to transfer it into the policy and into the practice, and that's what mainly is really happening. And then we do some clinical research, and Russell has mentioned also that we started slowly developing as a clinical trial site, and I will show you in the next slides also. Now regarding the funding, and funding is always important if you want to do the quality research. And one drawback, one probably limitation for the countries like Georgia is availability of any local funding. So we're very limited in that we have only one foundation, which gives annually the opportunity of funds to fuel biomedical research, and if you get lucky, you can get one project probably worth of 10,000. So what we have been doing, we have been really looking for the international collaboration, and we have been very tightly collaborating with Emory University. We have received several grants from PHI, NIH, and then we have been collaborating, as I mentioned, with some European institutions as well. So what we thought also that having some indirect costs really outlined within our funding will be very important for the future, for the additional capacity building, and we had kind of worked with the financial office at TB Center and spared some indirect and direct costs within the funding. And right now in 2015 and 16, we have seen that we have overall 5% of indirect costs, which can be further used for additional trainings, for example, ethics trainings. It's not that much probably, but it still helps to have some administrative and logistic stuff within the units. Yes, and publications, of course, previous presenters have been mentioning that if you really are targeting of the quality research, you might be seeing your publications. And this has been quite a long developing time until we got all our investigators really to publish the data, and it took a lot of training and effort. And we're now talking about Georgian, for whom English is not a native language also, and it took a lot of even English classes, and the Fogarty Emory program has been very supportive of that. Regarding developing a site for the clinical trials, I think that we have succeeded a lot in this, because if you will look on the slide, there are 6 TB phase 3 clinical trials, and Georgia is participating already in 3 of them. This is bringing additional huge capacity building and infrastructure developing for the institution, which is very important as well. Now about the overall country-level institutional capacity building for ethics. As Dr. Bloomberg and also Russell have mentioned, there has been really nothing in the early 2000 in terms of legal framework, ethics framework in the country. And unfortunately, it also keeps on going, because even now we have within the 3 different laws very little about the biomedical research. And then there is a draft of my biomedical research law, but it's still under discussion. And we face it on our daily basis when we do different research that we need more clear regulations and norms, and for example, for importation, for samples, and etc., like all these little details. But really, country needs to make steps forward in developing the legal framework for better research. And regarding the ethics, it's also kind of ongoing and developing throughout all these years. And right now, the Georgia has the model of local ethics committees when institutions have their own ethics committees, and you can imagine within the country where the main research is TB research, what we're doing, and a little bit HIV research. All these institutions don't really see much projects, and then all these local ethics committees don't get much opportunity for self-development or gaining expertise. So I think that something needs to be done in this direction as well. Although I'm proud that we have succeeded a lot within the institution in this direction. We had very well structured, we have developed very well structured local ethics committee with well-trained staff. And we got additional possibilities from Emory Georgia Research Training Program for annual ethics refresher trainings for all investigators who do research. And then through the clinical trials, of course, we got opportunities of GCP and GLP trainings. Right now, again, faculty program is developing the CT course, which is adapted in Georgia, and in near future, Georgian investigators will get the opportunity to do the online course in Georgia. And my last, but probably the most important slide, this is about the partnership. We have very good partners internally within the country, and it has been mentioned that we are collaborating with the HIV Center. We do a couple of collaborative projects with them. We do collaborate with the Center for Disease Control and Prevention based in Georgia. And then we have international partners, and they have been helping us a lot in all this capacity building. So I think that we probably succeeded on the first goal of individual capacity building, organizational as well, and probably next steps would be strengthening institutional capacity building. As a conclusion, I want to say that international partnership for the country like Georgia, middle-income country with little research knowledge is very important, and I think that with continuous education, we can probably reach the main goals. Thank you so much.
Questions from the students?
Only comment. Good afternoon, everyone. We are from Georgia. We have seen the two nice presentations which was done for the trainings. And I would like to express my gratitude and to say a public thank you for Emory and for Professor Henry Bloomberg, which gives us such great opportunity to develop. And I would like to emphasize that this research is not done for research. We are trying to do everything in close contact with clinical practice. It's very important. And another issue, the former faculties are working not only at our center, but also at NCPC. For example, Georgi Kutukutis presents here. And what it means, that we have the same approach, same ideas, which we are sharing, of course, and it's great to have such basis for further development. Thank you again.
So I'm Georgi from Georgia, and I think I'm privileged here because I have attended the both courses. Like I was I attended the sorted Eastern European course, and I was with Ronnie, Ajay, who was my mentor, and Professor Harris. So I pretty much encourage all to apply for the sorted course. It will be somewhere near you organized, and also I do hope that in future a lot of Georgians will also apply for the Emory Georgia Research Training Program. So I'm proud to be the part of the both training programs.
Thank you for I do think you raise a good point about the potential of different groups collaborating on research training, because obviously there's limited resources in this, and I think different groups can leverage the strengths of them.
And by the way, like the both groups are on my paper, so
okay. Bringing them together. All right, great. Yeah.
Asada, thank you for a very nice presentation. Just quickly about the local ethics committee. How do you fund that? Is that direct funding that comes down, or is it project, so protocols submitted and they have to pay for that. Because we struggle with this. You're not the only country that has problems with a local ethics committee. We often find, there aren't any local ethics committees. So
yeah, absolutely. And I haven't mentioned, but it was on the slide actually. That's one of the limitations why overall within the country it's so difficult to bring this capacity up. They are not funded at all. There is no funding for the local ethics committees. And this is similar for our institution. There are some incentives, like sending people for the conferences abroad, and then giving like possibilities to attend some courses, but not really direct salary or wages for them. So that's really a limitation.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Ronnie from MSF. I think one of the key issues of success in moving these capacity building courses forward is surely the resources and the funding. And you're lucky in Georgia to have Emory and Fugati. And I think we in Sorted have been very lucky to have one or two donors that have supported us over years with the scholarship. So I don't know, it's something maybe to think about later. Is there somewhere we can get together as groups to actually advocate for greater funding in line with the NTB? Because we're going to have problems in the year to come. And unless we propel better funding strategies and getting our donors to see the importance of what we're going to do, I think these initiatives might fall. So something to think about on a wide level, maybe later.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point, because I think the advocacy is really important to make people aware of how critical these research training programs are and how limited the resources are right now for this.
Thank you. And just maybe to take Ronnie's point on, that there are quite a number of people trained in these programs, for example, with the Union and MSF, become fellows. And they're doing super jobs in leading operational research. But again, it's donor funded. And if that stops, it dissipates, it goes, and has to be rebuilt from nothing again. So we don't want that to happen.
Question in the back?
My name is Flora. I'm currently working in Sierra Leone on research capacity in infectious disease. Over the last couple of days, hearing a lot of different experiences about working through different programs on building research capacity. There is a real appetite for this across the world, and I think there are a number of funders that are interested, like EDCTP, that put a lot more of their budget into the aspects of building research capacity. They're really interested in the development of consortiums and actually understanding the different experiences. I've seen very much the same thing in Sierra Leone, but there is less funding there at the moment, hopefully more in the future. But I think it would be great to think about how to bring these different projects together and to share those experiences, to put forward a larger funding pool that can be cross-country or international.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I think this is quite well taken.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me introduce our last speaker, Abraham Asefa, who is working at the Amahar Hanston Research Institute in the Ministry of Health Ethiopia, and he's going to tell us about learning through training at this institute. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Another group that from another continent this time, to say thank you to the Fogarty Initiative and Henry Bloomberg's and Arthur Kemker's initiative to include Ethiopia in this type of activity as well. But what I'm going to talk about is to give you an idea of how we look at it from the perspective of our training activities. No conflict of interest. So I will be discussing in the context of Ethiopia, how research is being handled there, and the experience of a research institute in the country and the lessons that we have learned over the last 15 to 16 years that I have been involved in. So Ethiopia is a country that is still a high burden country for TB, MDR, TB, HIV, TB. Although we have done quite well in terms of reducing mortality and prevalence and met all the MDD targets, we're still having almost 200,000 kids a year. That means there is quite a big need for research, not only at a national level, but also within the country. If you look at the different regions, it's a large country, there are differences for example, in case detection and other issues. So a country is not really one unit, it's multiple units, and if you go to regions, they will have also their disparities. So there is quite a high need for research. And the high research need also means in terms of volume, in terms of diversity of the research topics, in terms of depth, which is usually not paid attention to, and the quality of the output, just not the number. So we need to excel in all these because we are high burden areas. And the Ministry of Health and the TV program have been producing annual review reports, performance evaluation reports, and the challenges that they describe are usually very similar from year to year. That means there is a big need to make sure that these challenges are addressed squarely and not just piecemeal. To do that, we need to do good research, but research has its own needs as well. And the agenda is very well designed, research will not take us far. And sometimes research just follows money and partners' interests. Locally driven agendas are very critical if we are to succeed to change the reality on the ground there, not just to participate in collaborations and good publications. The organization of research, how research is organized in the country, whether there is collaboration, whether there is adequate resource, networking, how the institutions deal with research issues, whether there is a critical mass of staff experience there, whether there is memory from previous research output, how technology is taken up, and whether there is enough workforce there to do the research, and whether the workforce is not just pushing against walls, but is actually moving things forward, whether there is enough skill, motivation, whether there is retention, whether there is growth of the critical mass yearly. All this has to be addressed in order to be successful in research. Ethiopia has in the past tried to address this workforce issue and increase the number of graduates from universities dramatically, from 67 to 97,000 in 5 years in undergraduate education, from 4.5 to almost 8,000 in postgraduates. But although these universities are increasing their output in terms of research as well, the numbers are still very low. Africa in general produces only about 2% of the global research output in terms of publications. And Ethiopia produced in 2010, according to UNESCO, 2%. This has improved a bit, now we are at 2.6%. But the big challenge is that although Africa is on the rise, Ethiopia is also on the rise in terms of publications, the proportion of citable papers, if you look at among the top 10, Ethiopia is 6.3%. So there is quite a lot to do in terms of improving the quality, which would come in time. But the numbers of researchers we have are extremely few. Per million population, we have only 83. Some countries have 7,000, 6,000 per million. This is very, very low for a large population like Ethiopia. And if you look at the distribution of these researchers within the country, according to the government report, almost 2/3 are in the agricultural sector. Health researchers make up only 5%. So it's extremely low. So it's difficult to expect quite a big change in output if you look at the current situation there. ARI is a biomedical research institute that has been around now since 1970. It is Emperor Haile Selassie opening it. When it opened, it was a laboratory which was run by Scandinavian scientists together with Ethiopians locally to look at the immunology of leprosy. But over time, the health research priorities in the country have shifted. Leprosy has given way to TB, and a lot of the researchers have moved in that direction. And now ARI does quite a lot of work on tuberculosis, around a quarter of the activities. And also the attention has shifted from large populations to, for example, maternal and child health issues to respond to the requirements in government. So the basic role of ARI is to serve as a hub. It has a good international network. It links partners from outside major universities with local universities. Through ARI collaboration networks, we have been able to bring in quite a lot of research collaboration, but at the same time also provide training. And the training that I'll be talking about is 3 different types of trainings in TB. One is training of biomedical researchers, the other one is clinical researchers, and the third one is program people, operational research. The needs are a bit different. Biomedical is mainly postgraduate and laboratory type of training. Clinical researchers in ethics and ACP, GCLP clinical trials. In operational research, it's mainly research methodology and ethics as well. With regard to biomedical training, that has been the main area where we have contributed a bit. And it's much easier compared to the other types of trainings because those who come to us come because of our TB experience in the lab as well. There is better funding and the resources are more focused. And they also get their degrees. But the challenge is, of course, that these individuals do not immediately transfer their research output to changes in the communities. In terms of program staff training, we have been active in what is known as the TB Research Advisory Committee Initiative, TRAC. This is a platform of national stakeholders to support the Ministry of Health's TB program in research and evidence-based decision making. It involves a number of institutions, and we have been the secretariat. We have been giving courses in research methods and epidemiology, but later on, as of 2012, we have been providing this modular course that have just been mentioned, similar to what the sorted model is. 3 blocks of training, hands-on to do research at the same time, do the analysis and publish the data, and then try to influence the regional activities within the country. We have had 13 different teams trained together in different regions of the country, 52 participants, and they have been able to produce something like 11 papers so far out of 18 projects. The others are ongoing. The opportunities are that there is a greater chance of the translation into practice of the findings, and there is higher likelihood of the research issues being relevant to the needs of the community in terms of, for example, priorities or equity among the regions. The challenge is, of course, that these program people are busy. Time budgeting is difficult. Sometimes the policy of the government doesn't self-allow. When we started in 2001, the ministry TV program staff were specifically instructed by the minister not to engage in research, which he considered a luxury at that time point, and they had to do it outside their official time. But now, of course, this has been taken up as a major activity and is part of their regular job. The other challenge we had is in clinical practitioners training, physicians training. That's where the EMRI-TB collaboration has been very, very helpful. Because as clinicians, they have access to patients. We need them in all our health research activities. We need them as investigators or co-investigators, at least as partners, because they have to do the clinical evaluation of our patients. But to get them to engage as PIs has been very difficult. They have needs to do research because they rely mainly on textbook findings and do not read the latest papers necessarily unless they are engaged in this type of research collaboration. So there is an actual need, a gap in the health workforce among clinicians to update themselves, engage in research, and generate their own data. There is high interest, but the problem is that they have to do quite a lot of work, including overtime. And therefore, they don't give us much time to participate as investigators. But through the EMRI support, because the EMRI grant has enabled them to have protected time for research, we have been able to engage some of them. And I don't want to go into details. It's similar to what Russell has described about the type of activity that we are running. It's more or less exactly the same as what is happening in Georgia. There is the same mission, but the only difference in Ethiopia is that the training program and the research we do was geared towards improving case detection. What we thought was by focusing everything towards one major target, we would be building a pool of resources and also continue with the research, because the Ethiopian case detection rate at that time was less than 60%. And we have long-term training and Masters of Science programs also with scientific and grant writing and biostatistics, which is going on at the moment. And we have been able to produce some papers, but we are in the initial phase of this picture that Russell showed earlier. This is the first 5-year and therefore we expect that there will be more clinicians engaged in activities because of the very good support that the program gives in terms of protecting time and also resources, particularly in internet connectivity and research article search. The lessons, if you compare all these three parameters, I think the most important thing in any collaboration is to look for the internal drive of both partners. We cannot just start a partnership and think that is going well just because we are together. Unless there is a commitment internally, which is driven by internal dynamics, then the efforts will probably last only a very short period of time. So it's good to align interest and build on that. There should be some complementarity, added value, and it should focus on talent and supporting those who are really talented and motivated. How can this internal drive be generated? I think a priority would be to discuss with partners to try to develop a long-term blueprint or sort of roadmap, or at least a strategic type of plan where the interest of both parties is well addressed. If there is that type of institutional interest, then there will be opportunities to build on the manpower there and also move further. And then once outputs are successfully demonstrated, then it will generate its own activity and the inertia to start. Once that moves, then it will go faster. And another important thing to consider would be to train with a health intervention in mind, to select a particular topic so that the research that is done will be continued further and gains depth. It would not be just looking for numbers of publications in different topics and choosing one topic this year, another topic there, and nothing is building on previous findings. So it's very common to read in papers at the end as recommendations, further research is recommended. We have to come out of that and keep on building on previous findings. I think collaborations, international collaborations will help institutions like ours if we build on what we have achieved in the past and not just start something new every time. Thank you very much.
Abraham, thank you very much. So any questions for Abraham? Any comments? Right. Crystal clear. Sorry.
Can you comment on some of the challenges for your trainees after they get through the formal training, like the next steps after the formal training?
Yeah. With the biomedical trainees, it's usually straightforward career function. So they go into universities as teachers, or they become involved in the different tasks that they have been sponsored to do. With regard to the operational type of trainees in government institutions, in programs, and their partners in the universities, there is also a straightforward engagement, which would last variable period of time, depending on how they are building. The major challenge we have in training is when we work with clinicians. They come in and then you invest in them, they get trained, they start, and then sometime later they are busy with something else and the communication becomes bad. And so a sort of engagement which lasts long is very difficult to gain among clinicians. And I'm very surprised that in Georgia a surgeon is leading the whole activity, which is fantastic. This is something which they know.
Yes.
Just how you said about the foreign protective research lab, did you find that other process went through ministry to allow clinicians to be released from certain activities within the scientific research, or sort of how did you get the buy-in to that?
So this protected time we could negotiate. One of our clinicians was a dermatologist working in the hospital where Ahri is based, a dermatology hospital. So we could negotiate protected time for that individual, and there was support from the management, and therefore it worked. In other cases, these are clinicians who work, for example, in infectious disease departments in the medical school, and they are expected to do some research, and they can present that as an argument and demand a protected time. The usual problem is when physicians, they can, if they push, gain some protected time, but usually decide to use that time to earn some more money in private practice and so on. So that's what drags them out of ongoing programs also, because research doesn't pay. So they do these publications and then suddenly they're absorbed by the needs of earning money in the family areas and so that's a huge problem that we have often. And it's also the same problem that drives them out of research careers into employment in non-governmental organizations, where sometimes they have the opportunity to do good research there, but often they end up doing other work, which is of course important, but is not necessarily the big interest that they would have probably maintained if they had remained with the research institutions and efficiently the research institutions as well.
So what I'd like to do, if there's no more questions for Abraham, we've got about 8 minutes. Are there any questions, comments anybody would like to make to any of our presenters? So start with you.
Russell Dackham, Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine. I just wanted to kind of highlight here what you were just saying and what the presenter from Georgia kind of highlighted as well, I think, if I'm right, is the importance of the enabling environment for research. So I saw in one of your slides, you saw the massive increase in the number of research projects you had once you put a research support unit in place. I guess those two things were linked, or yeah. So I think it's there's a real good and valid drive for strengthening of individuals, but it's also important to ensure that the enabling environment is also addressed at the same time. So I just wanted to tease that bit out.
Thank you. I think Ronnie and also the union in the India office has seen just that. You have a critical mass, and it's amazing what 3 people can then do in terms of research productivity.
Sure, absolutely. But also, I mean, if you don't have that enabling environment within the then it becomes much more of a challenge to actually carry on.
Yep. So a comment and a question. The comment is that since 1994, the American Thoracic Society has run training programs in research methods now in 7 different parts of the world, 2 regions, Latin America and Africa, and 5 separate countries. It presents a little bit of a different model from what's been described in that at least for 5 of the courses, it's a collaboration with the local professional society, the respiratory society. So it serves to build some capacity within the society and therefore some staying power, if you will, for research and creates a bit of a climate for research within the local society. The other 2 are collaborations with US CDC in India and Vietnam. And I think we've had probably 2,500 graduates now, and have learned a lot over the past 22 years in doing this. But the question I have is the one major stumbling block that we've come up against that we've had great difficulty in solving is the mentorship. And I thought maybe Dr. Kumar could comment on how in SORTA you manage to match a mentor and a student through the full process. Ours is 2 years, not 1 year, but it nevertheless, and in part because of our selection process, I think we've not had the narrower focus that you have on people who are going to go straight through with the output of a paper, which might make it easier to have to match a mentor. But we've had a lot of difficulty in developing a mentorship program. So how does that work in sort of?
No, thanks for the question. I think mentorship remains a challenge, even despite all the success we've had. But getting a pool of mentors for a course always remains a challenge. And one of the things we have done is, in terms of developing mentors, is to identify, once we have a course, we identify some participants within the course who are interested and committed to make a career out of operational research, and bring them back as junior mentors, and do it over a period of 3 or 4 courses afterwards, and that then we have them developing as independent mentors after maybe 3 or 4 courses. So similar, I attended the course as a participant, to give you an example, And then I became interested, and then I was given an opportunity to come back to the next course and the next course as a junior mentor, where I was in essentially helping the senior mentor and learning along the process as to how to mentor others. And once I went through like 3 or 4 rounds like that, I became confident about handling it independently. And so this has been, it has worked very well, and over the period we have built a critical mass of people, and now I can conduct courses independently and build a pool of mentors in India, and similarly, some people are doing it in elsewhere. So I think that has worked, but it's a long-term process. It's not going to happen.
Could we poach some of your mentors?
Sure. Why not?
I think mentorship training is, or rather, identifying mentors is a huge problem, and I think that's across the board. The one thing that we've tried to do with our unfunded poverty programs is take former trainees who have, benefited from the program. They're very invested, and now they're becoming the mentors of new trainees. And we've kind of added a layer of formal mentorship training, which is now becoming, as you know, popular in the U.S. And we're trying to adapt some of those training materials, so it'll be appropriate cultural context for areas where we're working. But I think it's a challenge. But having our former trainees take over as mentors and then matching senior and junior mentors, I think has been one approach that we've been trying to use.
And Phil, just to add to that, we have, between the union and MSF, we have a cadre called the Operational Research Fellow. So these are either full-time or part-time people working in programs or linked to programs, and part of their job description is to act as mentors on various courses. So there's no getting away from them. Somebody over here, 2 more questions.
Sorry, I just have a quick question. My name is Ayan. I'm from Somalia, but I've been working in the US and the UK most of my life. And there is a group of, as you guys know, Somalia is a war-torn country, but it's been building itself up, and there are regions that are quite stable. And there are opportunities now where some of these regions would like to sort of conduct population research. Up until now, there hasn't been any good data or any publications that have come out of those areas, as far as I know, and I've been doing a lot of literature research. I guess my question is, for areas such as this, what activities do you guys do to engage with NTP program managers and staff to try to get them in the early days as they're establishing new systems for them to start thinking of operational research now as opposed to 20 years from down the road?
Well, very quickly, we've had people, haven't we, Ronnie, from Somalia on our sorted courses. Yeah? So we have trained people from Somalia. So if it's a good project, we think this is strategically helpful to the country, we will bring people onto our courses. In terms then of how it builds up in the country, well, obviously a bit different. Could we run a sorted course in Mogadishu? Difficult.
No.
Yeah.
But maybe consider Hargeisa or
Yeah,
some of the other
sure.
areas where they're more stable. And perhaps if there hasn't been a success the first time, maybe go back again and there might
Sure.
get more success.
No, sure. Thank you. I think time for one last question, and I'll ask Henry to wrap up.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I joined in the last moment, most of the stuff. But anyway, I have something in mind, because I was fortunate to be trained by these OR courses in 2014 in Nepal and Anthony. But I have something in mind. After that, we have a successful publication, and we have the OR Fellow Network. But I have kind of feeling that because the critical mass of trained products now, I am in Bangladesh, so maybe some friends are different across the different countries. So I think to utilize this critical mass properly, to engage them after finishing even the courses, because a lot of still the presentation shows the researchers gap. There's a huge gap in country level. I think Bangladesh is not exception. So maybe donor funding and everything is going different countries. So how can, through this network, utilize this fellow properly to in-country capacity building on operational research? So I think maybe you want some sort of initiatives.
Sure. No, thank you. All I can say is we need resources.
Yeah.
I strongly believe in this fellowship program. We don't have enough money. We're not sure if it will continue after the donor program is finished, but it's, to me, crucial. Absolutely. So thank you for raising it.
Okay, well, I think our time is up. We're over a few minutes. I want to thank our speakers for really all gave excellent presentations. Thanks again to Russell Kemper for the idea of having this symposium. And thank you to the audience for your participation and attendance.